Greetings and welcome again to lesson 10.7, page 450 for the 8th general and 16.7, page 750 for the 7th accelerated. We're continuing with our last lesson of Unit 10, and for you general students, it's the last lesson of the year. So, we're going to continue with exponents and scientific notation. Today we're going to perform operations with numbers written in scientific notation. Our essential question: how can you use operations with numbers written in scientific notation? So, you went to the top of page 450 or 750, depending on what the corresponding book is, and you wrote something down. Some of you probably wrote it all down. I added a little bit to it, so you might want to add a little bit to it. And it said to add or subtract numbers written in scientific notation with the same power of 10. Same power of 10. All you have to do is add or subtract the factors. Now, this blue part, that's what I added. So I'm going to then say right here with a little star, come down here, after you add those factors, you still have to make sure that your final answer is in proper scientific notation. Because you could add some decimals, and those decimals equal a greater number than 10, and you've got to redo that number and write it in proper scientific notation. Now that's probably the easier thing to do, because when you're adding numbers that have different powers of 10, the first thing you have to do is rewrite those numbers so that they have the same power of 10. And then after you add them, once again, make sure the final answer is written in scientific notation. So let's do a couple. Here we go. Adding and subtracting numbers, finding the sum or difference, writing our answers in scientific notation. If I go a little too fast, that's okay. You should just stop writing. You should be watching and listening, and then pause to copy it down. So number one, 2.1 times 10 to the negative fourth plus 9.74 times 10 to the negative fourth. First thing we recognize, we have the same exponent. So all we have to do is add the factors. 2.1, 9.74, add that together, 4, 8, 11, and we keep the power 10 to the negative fourth. And so we look at that, 11.84 times 10 to the negative fourth. Well, if we were to do that number, we would move this 1, 2, 3, 4 places. To put it in proper scientific notation, though, we have to already move it 1 to write 1.184. So instead of going 4 to the left now, we only need to go 3 to the left to get the right number. So we reduce our exponent to 10 to the third to have our final answer. All right, moving on. 8.2 times 10 squared plus 3.41 times 10 to the negative 1. And I'm going to do it twice because it doesn't make any difference which one you change into the power of the other, as long as you then at the final end make the number in scientific notation. So I'm going to start out by making them into the power of 2. So we're going to have 8.2 plus some number. Well, when we come over here, if you take that 3.41 times 10 to the negative 1, it's going to move back here. So you have 0.341, right? That's the number that we would be subtracting if it were correct. However, we want to move it 2 places. 2 places to the right to get there. To get there, we want to move 1, 2 places. 1, 2 places. So we want that decimal to be here, so we've got to put another decimal. So the number we're going to add is 0.00341. So 0.00341. Well, I can put my zeros on top if I want. Add them together. 14302. There's my 8. So 8.20341 times 10 to the second. Because we already had it in 10 to the second, and our decimal, when we did the adding, came out to the right decimal place. All right, so that was more of the easier one. So now we want to take that first one, 8.2 times 10 squared, and we want to make that into a power that is negative 1. Well, 8.2, if I move it 1, 2, I would get 820. Well, I want to move the decimal backwards 1 place, to the left 1 place, so that I have a number 8200 times 10 to the negative 1. Because if I move that decimal back 1, right here, back 1, I would have 820, which is our number. So I'm going to take 8,000 200. And I'm going to add 3.41. Now it goes right under there because that's where the decimal is in 8,200. So I get 1, 4, bring down the decimal, 3028. Well, this is times 10 to the negative 1. Well, as you can see, the decimal is not in the right place. I've got to move it 1, 2, 3 places. 3 places. Okay. So to get 8203, I've got to now go to the right 3. So I'm adding 3. It's like taking 10 to the negative 1, multiplying it by 10 to the 3. Because I've got to go 3 places to get it back here. 3 places to the right. That's a positive 3. Well, 10 to the negative 1 times 10 to the 3 actually is 10 squared. So 8.20341 times 10 squared. Because what do? We add those exponents. Add them, and negative 1 plus 3 is 2, and it gives us the same exact answer as we had over there. All right, so now you can copy that down, and then when you're done, come to the next example. Number 3, 8.7 times 10 to the 5th minus 4.5 times 10 to the 5th. Hey, we're subtracting this time, and we have the same exponent. Nice. So we take those factors. 8.7 minus 4.5. 7 minus 5 is 2. Bring the decimal. 8 minus 4 is 4. And we keep that exponent, 10 to the 5th. And we are good. Done. When we did the decimals in the right spot, and we made them both to the 5th. They are both to the 5th, so we're done. Number 4, 6.45 times 10 to the 5th minus 5.96 times 10 to the 5th. How lucky can we be? We have the same exponent again. So we take 6.45 and we subtract 5.96. And I'm going to have to borrow. I'll come over here and borrow. And that makes that a 5, not a 6. Hello? Makes that a 5. This 14 becomes 13 because I had to borrow from it to make that 15. And 15 minus 6 is 9. 13 minus 9 is 4. Bring down the decimal. 5 minus 5 is 0. So I end up with 0.49 times 10 to the 5th. Because the 5th is the same exponent. We keep it when we subtract those. Unfortunately, our number is not in scientific notation because the decimal's in the wrong spot. I've got to move it 1 here. Well, I would have to go 5. Well, I have to move it 1 to the right already to get the decimal in the right spot. So that means what happens to the exponent? That's right, it goes down. 4.9 times 10 to the 4th. Voila. All you got to do is pay attention to what happens. And our next example, 4.7 times 10 to the 5th minus 7.2 times 10 to the 4th. Okay, 2 different exponents this time. Let's start with the first one, 4.7 times 10 to the 5th. We're going to change 7.2 times 10 to the 4th into 7.2 times 10 to the 5th. So if I take that 7.2 and I make it to the 4th, I would go 1, 2, 3, 4. But I don't want to move it 4. I want to move it 5. Which means to go 5 and get to that spot, I've got to move back 1 here and put the decimal here so I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and get it there. So this number becomes 0.72. I don't need all those other decimal places. So now I take my factors, 4.7, and I subtract 0.72. And I have to put my 0 in there. Come over here, make this a 3, make that a 16, make that a 10 minus 2 is 8. 16 minus 7 is 9. Bring down a decimal. 3 minus 0 is 3. So 3.98 times 10 to the 5th. If I chose to make them to the 4th, this 4.7 times 10 to the 5th would have to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 4 point, well, not 4 point anymore because I'm moving that thing 5 places. So 4, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I don't want to move it 5. I only want to move it 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I make my new number is 47 times 10 to the 4th. So now I take 47 and I subtract 7.2. Again, I got to put my 0 up there with my decimal. And I got to borrow and make that a 3. This has got to be 16. That's got to be 10 minus 2 is 8. 16, bring down a decimal. 16 minus 7 is 9. 3 minus 0 is 3. So now I have 39.8 times 10 to the fourth, because we made it into the fourths, right? Over here we made it in times 10 to the fourth. So I've got to go back one, which means instead of going 4, now I have to go an additional place to get it where I want it, 3.98. If I have to go one more, I go times 10 to the fifth to get the same answer. Voila. Ladies and gentlemen, that ends this first video. If you would please, if you would please, here's your quick write. Pause the video, write those two down, and do your best and adding those two, adding and subtracting, and then of course take a quick break, come back, and we'll do our second video where we're going to multiply and divide.